Hi everyone, I'm Deepika Trehan, and 19th November is Women Entrepreneurships Day and International Men's Day. And the celebrations would have been incomplete without having this amazing panel discussion with amazing men that I admire for the work they do and for their contribution towards championing equity in their own silent way. Let me briefly introduce our panel today. We have Nikhil Dey, who's the Executive Director of AdFactors PR and a coach. We have Ritesh Kapahi, who's Senior Director Engineering, Cisco Systems, and nurtures talent irrespective of gender. We have Ratish Trehan, the Head of Emerging Asia Viatris, and a DEI champion in his organization. Alongside, we have Manish Chum. He's the founder of Learnify Today, and he's made that shift from HR towards L&D and providing equal opportunities for all of us to learn and navigate our careers. And last but not the least, we have Ritesh Agarwal, who is the Managing Director of Europe, Accenture, and also on the board of a woman-led startup. Welcome all of you wonderful men. Thank you for joining me and for your time today for this conversation.
Pleasure to be here, Deepika. Thank you for putting this together.
Appreciate it, Nikhil. So I'm going to start with something which is open for all of you all to answer. As I identify each one of you as a male ally towards championing equity, how has your journey been? What got you towards, contributing your iota towards equity? And what do you think are or have been your challenges? It's open to all. Anybody takes the lead.
I think, Deepika, if I start perhaps, one of the earliest childhood memories that I have of equity and actually of having a woman leader was that of my mother. She was a housewife, and with 3 sons, she definitely was the boss of the family. And what she really inculcated in us at the time, and we were very lucky growing up in the 70s and 80s, was the importance of doing household chores at home, right from cleaning toilets to cooking food. This was not very fashionable at the time, but the way she insisted on doing this, not just sort of for us as children, but also the way my father used to sort of help with the household chores, that really set the tone for what was to come, as far as sort of taking it very naturally, as far as sort of equity and everything following from there is concerned. At least that was the the early seeds of that equity. And I guess that is if those seeds are sown early, then of course it could be a game changer in the society.
Yeah, so I completely echo with Ritesh, and quite similar. So for me, my mom was also that sort of role model, and it was the upbringing. You had to do everything. It was not whether you choose not to do it. You had to clean the house, as simple as that. And from childhood, the upbringing was such that I didn't differentiate the roles that were given to me or my sister. So I'm realizing it now. I didn't realize it at that time that this subtlety was being built into me. But now if I reflect back, it started there. So I completely agree with Ritesh. And the thing about what challenges have you faced playing this role of an ally? I think so. You face challenges all the time, every time. It's your mindset. So the bringing was that there was no differentiation. Yes, men and women are different. We play different roles. We've got different responsibilities. Biologically, physiologically, we're different, period. But it doesn't matter. So that dignity of labor was built in at a young stage, and that it got reinforced as we went forward. Unfortunately, the education system in India is such that you've got to prove yourself to be a certain tag. And the way I was brought up was, you have to be an engineer. I was from, my father was a scientist, so you had to be an engineer, doctor, or a scientist, period. Otherwise you're useless, right? And when you went to engineering school, you found that there was no women. So it had a different effect on me. Why? I'm losing out. I grew up in an all boys school as well. And then it was like, okay, there's some part missing. So that forced me subtly, I think so, to go the opposite way, that, heck, why does this happen? So I think so it was a mixture of all of those, and we face challenges all the time. So to me, this is it. I do what I want to do, period.
Thanks for sharing. Manish, Nikhil, RK?
Yeah, so I mean, when I heard about Buddha Ritesh's story of, I think my cases are pretty much, I think, the extreme side of it. I never felt the need for this whole equity concept till it hit my, kind of doorsteps and home, right? So my upbringing has been in a typical all boys school, till my graduation, and then the first co-ed studies was in my MBA. So I'm talking about as late as that kind of thing. And I'm sure if you would have been in a boys school, in a boardings, you understand that, at that age and with that kind of exposure, woman is like a creature from Mars, right? Rather than another human being in that sense. So, and from a family background itself, my father has like 8 brothers, and I think in that generation, and he's at the 4th number. And when my sister was born, that was the first time we understood that, okay, how a girl child works, and how a girl child is grown up. So that is a kind of thing which emerged. But I think because of the education level, and my father is a doctor, so we had a small community of doctors, and in Jaipur, and so that way, we were always taught that, okay, you have to be decent, you have to be civil, when you're working with cross-gender kind of things. And I think the first time when I heard about this whole equity concept and, this gender, I think owes to my profession, being in HR, right? Wherein that's where I got introduced to it, that, okay, no, this is an agenda which is coming in. And initially it was witnessed as, okay, it's another thing which organization or the CEOs of the global headquarters want to drive it. And then my interest started developing into it, right? Okay, what it is, how it is. I think the first event I very well remember, which hit me hard, absolutely hard, in the gut, was when my wife applied for a job, in the big US-based tech company, right? And names are not important here. And she was pretty excited about it because she got selected in every round. In the end, I think one of the recruiters asked that, okay, and when my son was like 2 years old, he asked my wife that, would you be open to travel, right? And she said, yeah, I'm open to travel, but I have to just plan because I have a small baby. And she was just asked that, okay, can you just wait outside and we'll come back to you? And when she went back and said, okay, look, we'll come back to you, in that sense. And by that time, her all papers were taken, offered, negotiated, everything. And, we all understand that that's how a general mental alignment of a candidate works. And I very well remember when she came home and I was babysitting my son, she knocked the door and she was in tears, right? And she said that, look, I think that's where it is. And of course, she had choices of words for that HR recruiter. But one thing which left me with a message was that, how would I have reacted if there is something which I'm capable of doing physically, and somebody is like, I'm being devoid of a particular opportunity. And that's where, for the first time, I think in my early 30s, I realized that I think this whole piece of equity is in my house, right? And I think that made me, for the first time, realize that, okay, there's something like this, and I think I might be very unfair to a few people And it was not that I did something wrong. It's just that the whole reality dawned upon me that I need to be more conscious about it, right? That was one which realized on, and that's where my whole journey started of taking very active interest of doing this. And then I think that was one. And the second thing was when I went for an ISABS workshop for this behavioral labs. I think that was a whole exposure of, self reflections, when you go into that labs and you understand that, what kind of biases and what kind of shades you are operating in, in that sense. So I think my journey with regard to equity has been very exploratory. Nobody told me that, okay, this is how it is. Nobody shared with me, this is good, this is bad in that sense. It was like growing up and understanding of it. That's how I realize. And so every day is a new day in that sense. And if you if I were to tell what are the challenges, I think, I don't know if it's a challenge or an opportunity, but this whole dialogue in a social space, at the space and in homes about equity, right? Equal contributor in the household chores, office, aspirations, men, women. I think there is a good positive dialogue which has started, but I don't think we have settled with that dialogue yet, right? So there is always a new definition which is coming into the forefront, either by social movements like Me Too movements, or if in relative or in friends, a woman takes a call, which is a unique call, right? So I think those are the few points which pushes the boundary of this whole dialogue of equity. So this dialogue is ever changing, right? And there are all new dimensions coming in. And I think at times we move the goalpost as well, right? So I think that's my journey and my experiences there.
So Deepika, I would like to add on this, Ritesh. So I think for me, it has been, very experiential, right? So I always believe that the experiences, what we have seen, they shape us into what we are today. So for me, I think it was my mom. I lost her very early. I think I was in 8th standard and I lost her. But I think I come from a very humble family in Punjab, and I actually never saw my dad, entering into kitchen. I mean, even for like chai, right? And there was like all this expectation in the household on certain things, which was. And I think that was, I mean, even though he was, a general manager and, regional manager in the bank industry, and even my uncles also, I think they were in very respective senior positions. But I think at least in the home environment, I'll be very honest, there was an expectation, from the women in the house, even though I think they also came from a very strong educational backgrounds and things like that. So I think when I lost my mom, I think there was a lot of load which was actually put on my aunt, who was actually took care of us at that moment. So I think I observed her very closely, working in the kitchen, and I used to, offer help. Even, getting up in the morning and going to the dairy, to get milk at 5:30 in the morning, or coming and, helping with the vessels. And I think slowly I took some responsibilities, at least for, making sure that some of my dad's requirements, they were met, without waking up my aunt and things like that. So I think that was the first step into it. I mean, obviously I was not at an age at that time that I started thinking about it at that time. And I'm just reflecting based on the conversation and sharing my thoughts. So I think that was the first step into it. And then also after that, when I went into college, I think this is the DAV College, Jalandhar, I saw that there was only few women professors primarily teaching, English and literature or art. And I think the way the students ourselves, the way we were behaving in the class, that was like really, really bad. I think in terms of, this throwing these, whatever, paper and all that when the instructors are teaching, I think that was very bad behavior, what was being displayed by the students. So I think that used to hit you as a person, that's something which pains you. And I think then the life moves on. And I went to the college and I met my wife. I think she has been a great influence on me overall. And I think she shared the challenges of her friends, where there's an opposite side of expectation also, right? Where when the families don't have a boy child, and then there is an expectation of a girl child to actually be that, that boy in the family. So I think there are these certain things, which have been hitting very hard as I've been growing in my life and my experiences. And then I went off to US back in '98 for my career. And I remember, that experience in the hotel burning, while making dal. for the first time in a steel cooker, and then doing investigation to understand, how do we actually cook? And I think then, because in the US, we have no choice, but we have to do our own cooking ourselves. Otherwise, all the salary we will make, we'll end up paying to the cooks and the maids and all that. So I think some of these experiences have really helped to, understand what goes on while doing all of this work in the family environment, and not to mention even the recent environment with the COVID. I think that has been a great eye opener. While we say that we are all educated and we are even coming from the respective families, and I think there is this equity and all that, but I think there is still an expectation, I feel, that even though men and women in a single household, if both of them are working, there is still an expectation from the men that in the morning that the breakfast should be served by the woman in the family, whether we like it or not. And I think I started thinking a lot more about equity. I think I would say 5 to 6 years, 6 years back, I did a general management course with INSEAD, and I think I actually saw a lot of women leaders. I mean, ironically, in the previous phase of my 20 years of career, I had not really seen too many women leaders in the corporate environment, at least I was into, right? So INSEAD was a good eye opener, because we had a batch of 66. Out of those, 11 of them were the women leaders, and some of them were actually the CEOs in some of the organizations in India. And I think that was a large eye opener. And then also, coming into especially Cisco, this is the first time I started leading some of the women, and I observed that the women, while they are very emotional, but they have very pure sense and a very different perspective they bring into leadership by giving their opinions, and that they're very voiced. I think somewhere in our culture, the men as a leaders have also resolved into being very hierarchical in terms of their alignment in some sense. But I think in the women leadership right now, I think it is still very very vocal, very pure in some sense. So I think we start to filter and tailor some of the emotions out of that. I've seen that the women leaders are actually very bold, very courageous, and I think they mean business, right? I think in the industry. So I think some of these experiences, Deepika, I would not say that the equity was ingrained from day one in the home environment I was brought up. I think it's more of the experiences I've gone through, and I think learning from some of these conversations from these learned men, and I think those things have been shaping my experience and the thought process around this overall. Thank you.
For candidly sharing that.
Yeah,
Nikhil,
thank you.
go ahead.
Thank you. No, it's fascinating to see the different contours of this coming alive, and it's the real stories that touch a heart, right? When you really hear personal episodes. And for me, I mean, I'll start with something as recent as the first time you called me, Deepika, and you said, Nikhil, will you join here? And my first thought was, what do I know about this area of grooming women leaders, right? I mean, what qualifies me? Who the hell am I? And then it came back to me that, look, stereotypes and biases is actually at the core of what I have always felt should be worked against, right? Now, whether they're gender stereotypes or sexual orientation stereotypes, so there are so many, right? The whole that DNI thing. But for me, I think that's been in retrospect at the heart of it, because when I entered the public relations industry 25 years ago, I actually faced, and I still face the reverse discrimination, right? Because this is a woman-dominated industry. So when I, as a man, apply for a senior role in any corporate today, there is an unspoken and sometimes spoken role saying that if there are two equally good CVs, the woman will win. Because there is such a high D&I agenda, and HR heads are struggling to fill those positions in senior leadership. So the easy place to plug it in is the PR leader. So as a man in this industry, I have a first-hand ringside view of how difficult and how painful, like the Manish story and experience, and it feels so damn unfair, right? Like, what did I do wrong not to get that job? And it is therefore to do with these stereotypes and sort of biases, conscious or unconscious. And I think for me, therefore, I used to get questions by a lot of people saying, what is it like to work for a woman boss? Is it very different? And I was, dude, I never even thought of that. It was just, I have a boss, you have a boss, we have the same problems. Boss management is a gender neutral problem, right? So I think I've always approached it like that. And I think the best way to show up with sensitivity, but with the essence of equity is to not make that part of my equation, right? I don't think about it as woman boss, man boss. And I do agree with some of the points made that there is a wonderful sensibility that some of the women leaders that I brought. I mean, I learned so much from one about, forget business, just creating a wonderful environment to work. Now, is that a woman trait? I don't know. But that woman leader had it. And there are men who are equally great with design sensibilities and stuff like that. But I think that's where I approach it from. And therefore, it's an opportunity. Like I learn so much every time I talk to the women leaders in the CD Plus group about the challenges they're facing. And I think one of you mentioned about sharing the workload at home. My wife and I are struggling with that because my wife feels I don't do enough. And it's not that I don't want to do enough. I really want to, but I'm struggling to figure out how to do it because there is an unconscious way in which the house has been run till now. And we're recalibrating, saying that, for example, she used to order all the groceries. She used to order all the household stuff. Who made it her job? Nobody, right? So as of the last few months, we've sat down, made a list, figured out what I can do without messing it up, quote unquote. And I've taken on those roles. But I think these are real challenges of just trying to understand each other better. And interestingly, I looked up a little bit just on the topic of this International Men's Day. And I realized that this year, the theme, I wrote it down, was better relations between men and women, right? So I think that's a age-old problem, but it's a great one to put our collective man brains together and figure out how do we make that relationship stronger, better, more collaborative.
Absolutely. I think, yes, that definitely of, better relationships between men and women is something that needs to be worked on. I think a lot also would be shouldered on the openness of the horizons in terms of, understanding, knowing our respective modes of functioning and the spaces that we come from. Now, circling back to, sorry, Manish, go ahead. You're on mute.
Sorry, yeah. So I think one thing which really struck me, what Nikhil was saying, that, I mean, I think in my first initial 6 years, I was all working with women bosses. And I never realized it's a very different ballgame, because I think, as Nikhil rightly said, boss management is a gender agnostic problem, right? So I think we were pretty much focused on that. And I think every person brings their own sensibility to the work, the way they look at it. I mean, I've seen men as fussy or as hard to manage and as aggressive or as dominant as women as well. Of course, because of your gender construct in the society, there is always a certain sense of responsibilities thrown at you. Like, for example, I've never seen a man taking a career break, right? And when I took a career break, I think the often question which was asked to my wife was that, is everything okay between you guys? Is he doing well? Is he fine in COVID, in that sense? And he said, yeah, he's fine. I mean, he just want to try something new and he's been working on to it. And I've never seen I've seen a lot of women taking a career break with a lot of ease, of course, beyond maternity, right? So they just felt that, look, I just want to take a break because I want to start something, my own hobby, and they take it, right? But I haven't seen men take it. So I think the point is that I never realized, right, that, okay, this is something which works, right? And it's such a fuss to talk about, Of course, then I started feeling and understanding the negative part of it, that how women tend to miss out because of the structural constraints of the society and the way that we are structured. But now I'm the other side of it, that now everybody's forcing me that equation in that construct every time, right? So for example, I mean, it happened to me a couple of times, very good names, consultant approached me and, said, look, there's an opportunity. I'd give an interview. And then there is a silence. I said, what happened? No, they have decided that they will look for a woman candidate. I said that, look, you would have been aware of that. No, this mandate came on later on and all that. And I just left wondering. I said, okay, whatever it is, right? Now, for example, this whole LGBT thing, right? there are discussions which are happening that unless you believe in LGBT rights, you are not inclusive, right? So, for example, even the comic characters are, people are making comic characters coming out. So latest news was that Superman has come out that he's gay, right, in US. So there's a new strip which is coming in. So my only question is that I can just be neutral about certain things. I need not to take a stand that I believe in LGBT, right? And personally, I may not, but that doesn't mean that I'm not inclusive, right? So I may not. And another thing which strikes me is that, so I think somewhere there is a pressure to take a position on this. I mean, I don't know if I can say openly that, no, look, I don't believe in LGBT, but I'm not against it. I'm neutral, right? So whether I'll be considered as an inclusive guy or not, number one. So at times I'm being forced to take a position, and of course, being owing to my profession in that sense, I have to be inclusive at least to showcase that, yes, I do believe in everything, in that sense, whatever. But because I never connected with, and other thing is that this whole inclusivity thing has a very different dimension in Indian context, right? Extremely different. A lot of things have been looked at from a Western Hemisphere point of view, because the way, the women have evolved in the society part of it. India has a very unique challenges, in terms of this whole equity part of it. When we talk about gender equity, I think the equity is also for the fact that you give an equal opportunity to a person to apply for a job if he has been taught in a government school or a Hindi medium college. Equity is also the fact that, we don't stereotype people from their leadership potential because somebody background is some other different than the other person. So I think there are so many undertones of it, and this, and from a typical OD perspective, and we do a change management, all of it. Looking at the gender equity also has become an easy topic to discuss because you can differentiate the gender with your eyes, right? She's a woman, he's a man. But when you go to the other layer of it, right? The caste equation, the social status equation, right? The language equation. Those are, I think, also a difficult angle to talk about.
Thanks for sharing that, Manish. In fact, one thing that really, was my takeaway from your input right now was that are we talking about inclusion being forced to be opinionated, right? That's definitely a point to ponder, that do you really have to have an opinion to be called inclusive, or you can be neutral and kind of enable the environment, the ecosystem to make things happen without having a strong one-sided opinion about it. That's definitely a point to ponder. And circling back on, sharing the load, there's been this hashtag going on, share the load. Ritesh, I'm going to ask you on that. When you mentioned that, growing up, there was, unconsciously sharing the load of home chores and nurturing and caregiving. Now, what do you feel is the impact of a man's contribution towards that? Is it that he has to do the home chores to be, termed inclusive or championing equity? Or do you think it is more of a role modeling in terms of the mindset of equity, to develop the mindset of equity earlier on in a child's life?
You see, Deepika, when we step back and take a look at the term equity, what really is equity? In my humble view, it really is the breaking down of compartmentalization. Through the centuries, we see that, we have worked ourselves into compartments of what a particular type of species is supposed to do, be it race, be it religion, be it a caste, or be it gender. But one thing that, that is unique about gender compartmentalization is the fact that, throughout history, while race, caste, all of these issues, they developed in different ways across the globe. The issue of gender, almost uniformly, men got the better deal, across the world, if you see. Okay, And that had to do with, that started with, the smallest entity, which was the family unit. And then, sort of over a period of time, the lines between what was, a biological definition of male and female, that got blurred with the cultural definition of man and woman. And hence, sort of, you had these compartments being drawn where, certain types of household chores only women would do. And then, outside work, hunting, agriculture, all of that, sort of would be the domain of men. And, men over a period of time got a better deal. And that is how it, in a way got ingrained into the culture, the societies, irrespective of whether, you talk about the Western Hemisphere or indeed in the East. It almost developed uniformly across the globe, this, sort of this compartmentalization. To be able to break that, and, going back to your, your primary question, how do you see that, and how do you break that compartmentalization? See, this entire compartmentalization was a very top-down solution. It was imposed by families, by cultures, by, sort of people in power who invariably were men over the centuries. And the solution for this really is a bottom-up one, which is, where inclusivity comes in. Because, the moment you start talking about, everyone doing their own, sort of bit, and, sort of helping out and making a difference at the very, fundamental level, that is where, at least in my view, that is where the seeds of equity will need to be sown, and that is perhaps where the beginning needs to be made. I think, as Manish pointed out, Ratish pointed out as well, we've already made a start, but we are far from, really, reaching that, that level of equity today. There's a very interesting point that Manish pointed out around sort of appointments, because this is a topic that comes up so frequently now in our industry, especially when we are making appointments, when we are hiring at senior levels, when there is a discussion around promotions, and obviously, sort of Nikhil's industry is quite unique, but, outside of the advertising world, until very recently, if a man and a woman had the same qualification, it was invariably the man who got promoted, got the job, and that is where, this whole question around why do you need affirmative action? You need affirmative action to be able to at least force some level of equilibrium from where on you carry on, and at least, some of the global organizations, that's the view, HRs and, sort of senior management are taking, to be able to first, get to some sense of equilibrium before you move on from there.
Precisely. I think very well, kind of explained and insightful in a way, which definitely keeps us pondering and thinking over, equity and understanding equity better. And, gender happens to just be one space of the entire DEI that is spoken about, but gender takes just so much of the spotlight. Having said that, Ritesh, you mentioned something about gender compartmentalization. So this is my question to Ratish. Ratish, you've had, global footprints across about 20 countries, and Asia, and more importantly, India as a country, suddenly, is given all the wrong kind of spotlight when it comes to gender compartmentalization, right? What has been your observation across the various countries, cultures that you've been a witness to, in terms of that? Are we the only country which is really bad with gender compartmentalization, or it's a phenomena that does exist and has global footprints?
So very interesting question, and I do not know what's the right way, wrong way. Unfortunately, Indian education system teaches you what's right and wrong. And over the years, I've realized that is incorrect. And I'm again saying it's incorrect because I realized there's nothing right or wrong, and a few points that I'd like to add on. apart from stereotyping and biases, what Nikhil said, is what we lack is dignity of labor, right? If since time immemorials, or even if today you switch the way you give salaries. So if you're male and you're the only guy working, you'll get 80% of the salary. And if you're, or also if both are working, you get 80% of your salary. And if you've got a house spouse, you get double the salary. Suddenly you'll find everybody wants a partner who's working in the house. So I just want to make that comment. So it's how we have lack of dignity of labor in India. My experience, going back to your question, is having worked outside, majority of the workforce that I've seen outside, whether I was based in Russia or whether it was Philippines, Thailand and all that, I had the reverse. Majority were women. In fact, the funny thing is that you would remember when we were in Russia, I had a huge HR issue. The women in the organization came up, our head of marketing, sales, and came up and said, Ratish, you and Mikhail will stop recruiting because there's 80% women. There are no men in office. Right. So the challenges there were slightly different, right? So you had a lot of women coming in to the workforce, but the challenges at recruitment, I've seen women rejecting another woman candidate because, oh, she just got married. I said, so what? Oh, she just got married. So that means in a year she'll have a baby. I said, so how does that matter? No, she's not going to be around. I said, so what? Right? You've got 30% attrition in your company, right? If you give a 8-month break to this person, to this lady to go and have a baby, she'll be more loyal to you. You anyways have 30% attrition. So when you talk on numbers, and then suddenly I had this experience with this lady who was reporting into me in recruiting somebody when she rejected somebody because of this. And she said, oh yeah, I didn't think of it like that. I said, yes. The team below you has 30% attrition. Now, if you give this lady a break for 8 months, she'll be more loyal to you when she comes back. So the challenges are different. Yes, and in today's social media world, you will get trolled. Whatever you say, whatever you don't say. So it's better to keep quiet. So there'll be a minority, whatever you say, who will scream at you that you are a joker and they'll be against you. They'll come to threaten you, kill you. And there'll be another minority which will say that they support you, right? Majority, unfortunately, will keep quiet. So my view on this is just keep on doing what you stand for, what you believe is right, and respect people for who they are, irrespective of whatever their gender, sexual, religious beliefs and practices are. And I firmly believe in dignity of labor. So I'll add on to what you've said, and I'll just say dignity of labor, dignity of what that person brings to the table, is very important. And, my biggest learnings so far, which have stayed with me, have been from the most humble people that I've served. And I keep on saying, I learned communication from my office lady who used to get me tea, in Myanmar. It's a famous story. We don't have time, otherwise it'll take a lot of time. That's been my biggest learning. I learned from a sweeper sweeping hospital floors in a small town in Russia. And that lady, what she taught me is lifelong. So dignity of labor, to me, I'll just add, is essential. It doesn't matter whether it's a kid doing it, whether it's a wife doing it, and a husband doing it. It's dignity of labor, I would say. And if we break stereotype, break biases, and add dignity of labor, that's true equality. Otherwise, it's just a buzzword.
And linked to what Manish was saying, I'm sorry to speak out of turn, let's just bubble it up. The point of view that one is sometimes forced to take versus the neutrality versus doing something for optics is a real struggle that I've had in my head, right? What is genuine? What is authentic? What's real? What do I feel? And what am I doing because I don't want to appear to be whatever, like a tone deaf man. One of the things that recently, but not recently, a few years ago came to my attention was the concept of manels, right? We are on a manel today, largely hosted by Deepika. And it never occurred to me, honestly, till somebody pointed out to me saying that, look, Nikhil, as a senior leader, when you're invited to talk at an industry forum, do you check the ratio of men to women speakers? I said, no, how does that matter? And then somebody who was making this case pointed out to me saying that just look at the number of manels that there are and how will you break that, whether you call that affirmative action or not. But is it that there are not smart women who can come and talk on this topic? Why are there only men on all these panels? And from then, I started thinking about it. Right now, that's what I mean by bias. That was an unconscious or conscious. I had never thought about it. Whereas now I check and I ask. It's still the prerogative of the organizer to do what they want. But because I asked the question, maybe there have been panels that have changed in their composition. And here's where, for example, I said, okay, I'll make it a point that I won't appear on panels going forward. But part of that is also because of the optics of it, right? Whereas this is a very safe panel to be on. It's hosted by an organization that is really championing in leadership. I'm part of it. But otherwise, this is a potential troll-worthy panel, right? Saying, what the hell are
absolutely.
you guys?
And somebody could just rip us apart, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And so therefore, just being mindful of it, then thinking about it, and with awareness, jumping in or not, I think is an important part. And I'm just using the manel as a metaphor for a larger issue.
Absolutely well highlighted. I wish Cherian was here because he's forever been victim to the panel part of it, right? There've always been females and he being the only man on those panels. So yeah, well highlighted, Nikhil. And I think that's where one has got to kind of ground ourselves towards the authenticity and the intent of what you're doing. And that has to be irrespective of an external agenda. It has to be more towards getting to understand the authenticity from where people come from and giving authenticity a chance rather than stereotyping or labeling them into, various facets that we often get labeled onto. Manish, you had something to say.
Yeah. So I think, thanks, Ritesh, for pointing out that, from the gender composition in different markets, right? So in my earlier role, in my previous organization, I had an opportunity to work in mainland China, right? So I was working in Shenzhen, right? And there it was a very fascinating story to see that gender issue is not there, right? So we had a manufacturing plant wherein the woman was like 50% by default. And nobody was talking about gender, right? And you take by surprise that what it is happening. And I think that's the beauty of, when we put the dialogue at the core of society, so many divergent views come and that pushes the boundary of, the whole dialogue. So then, there are a lot of discussion that happened that this whole gender thing of equity, is there any commonality of the systems which is throwing it out? And obviously the whole discussion started of communist countries vis-a-vis the democracies, right? So if you look at China being a communist country, there is not a structural kind of a gender issue out there. I mean, we can of course have a view about how China operates. Within India, if you look at communist states, right, where traditionally there has been a higher education and you don't find a woman education significantly lesser than you find it in other states. You look at Bengal, which has been like for 30, 40 years being, by communist party. So then the first thing is that is the gender, hold this equity is a point of the governance system in which we operate, right? What is the problem here? That was a very, a great insight which we got discussed with some of my friends, in the different organizations, that is it a problem of certain political systems or societal constructs through which we get it? Do we need to change that mindset, or do we need to change certain fundamental aspects of a larger, construct there? Secondly, to the point of, what Ritesh mentioned about giving maternity breaks. Now, being an HR, I mean, that's the thing which you get encountered upon more often than not with the people managers. And it was very interesting for me to note that when the whole maternity benefit was increased from 3 months to 6 months, actually the gender participation in the workforce dipped, right? so there is also an insight there that people stopped hiring women, because they thought that their benefit cost will increase. They won't be able to manage their workforce in that sequence where there is a process industries, service industry in that sense. So the whole point is that there's always a two-side interpretations, right? And I think this whole debate of equity has reached to a point that we need to look at divergent views to settle this, thing, in that sense. That how do we make sure that the equity is represented across the board? It is multi-dimensional.
Deepika, I don't know if you're frozen.
Bring it-
Deepika there, or she's
No,
or she's having
I'm
bandwidth,
there. I'm there. I think my internet connection is
okay,
a little unstable.
okay.
Yeah, I'm there.
Perfect. So Deepika, I actually had a question, because consciously or unconsciously, if you look at it on this panel about International Men's Day, we are talking largely about gender equity through the lens of the inequity towards women, right? But I do think part of the spotlight on International Men's Day could be what are unique man problems, right? What the hell is it that we struggle with or suffer? Like, for example, I find because of stereotypes and unconscious biases, expressing emotion exceedingly tough, right? It has been inappropriate, right? It's just not okay to express my emotions. From childhood, that's a man stereotype. And therefore, if I do, I'm seen as a soft boss. I'm seen as a guy who doesn't kick ass and, do all of that. And I don't fundamentally believe that that's necessary in being an effective leader, right? In carrot and stick analogy, I think there's so much more that positivity, encouragement, and inclusion and collaboration can do. But that's not always how the stereotyping is there. So I would love to hear if there are any, and this is just my own personal man problem, but maybe there are other men problems, and there are very, very few occasions when men get together and are allowed to say that, this is a challenge we have, right? We're always trying to fix all the other challenges. So I'd love to hear a few views on that. If that's not part of your agenda, I'm hijacking it.
No, in fact, well hijacked, Nikhil. I think that's where the synergy of thought comes in, because my next question was that, and that's open to anybody on the panel here, is that that's been my observation as well. Besides being, running the Women Leadership Development Platform, but I feel that men, and that's why I said that, silent champions of equity, because I've observed that men who are kind or who are empathetic or who are sensitized towards inclusion are generally perceived as weak, right? So is that something that, any one of you would like to share your experience, or is that a challenge that you've come through as well?
In my observation, Deepika, as workplaces evolve and as family units evolve, we see definitely a trend towards normalization of what is expected of men, and and environments where it is quite all right for men to show emotions. It is also being talked about a lot, just like affirmative action. It's being talked about a lot in the corporate world in terms of how what is expected of men, and how it is absolutely okay and quite natural for men to show sort of their soft side and to show emotions as well. Having said that, it is the very beginning of that journey, and it is going to take time. And I would say the breaking down of some of these barriers will almost follow the breaking down of the equity barrier. Because you see, whether we like it or not, men have had it, and it is, a disruption that is happening at this point of time. So obviously, situations where, sort of we will increasingly find ourselves in an uncomfortable spot. But I guess that is all okay. I mean, it is part of the creative destruction that is happening. But I, just sort of to circle back to one of the points from Manish as well, around the whole topic about men or women participation in workforce, because it's a very interesting topic. In fact, it came up for a debate in one of our sort of internal meetings. When you look at sort of certain societies like sort of China or Korea, or indeed Japan, you have female participation to be much higher. But then the other side of the argument also is the fact that the proportion of women participation in workforce is not really a measure of equity. You could have, in certain types of governments, you could have people being forced into work, but that does not really make them more equitable societies than the others. And it's just something for us to, sort of also keep in mind, because the topics of equity are, sort of perhaps a little bit more complex than, just having, women participate in the workforce in equal measure.
That's a valid point of observation, Ritesh. However, let's face it, I think, yes, the numbers could have been, 1920 in terms of a little bit here and there when it comes to representation, but the numbers are glaringly unequal, right? So that's what brings me to you, RK. I mean, you're in senior leadership in your organization.
Yeah, we lost. No, she's back.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So
you have to repeat your question to RK.
Yeah. So RK, my question to you was that, you're in the senior leadership team, and often women have expressed them as being treated as a token, even if they are representing over there in the boardroom. Now, how do you make a woman not feel as a token representation? What are the measures that you personally, as an individual, as a leader, as a manager, take to ensure that there is a sense of
the gist of the question? She'll probably come back. Interesting one. What is it that you can shed light on, if anything, about ways in which that tokenism can be moved to something more meaningful?
Yeah, I think I would talk about first, the vulnerability driven trust in the organization, right? So, and I think, Deepika, I'll get to your question very shortly. I feel that, in the organizations, at least I've been in the management position or leadership position for the last 15 plus years. And I think today, even in Indian context, everybody's talking about this D&I and the percentages in the industry and stuff like that. So while, most of the HR organizations, they are already very diverse in the women leadership, and all these concepts are coming up, I feel that there is a lack of safe environment even for the men to actually really bring in and influence that change, right? Because they're very scared and very worried about what to do and what not to do, right? And the same principles in the organization, in some sense, they come as a barrier, and a large barrier. I feel that, because a lot of my managers who are men, they don't know at times in given situations, what do they really need to do in terms of showing the support or lack of support in certain cases, and everything depending on how it bubbles up in the organizations as a challenges. So they want to be very safe, not say anything, not do anything when it comes especially to dealing with the women talent, or even growing the women talent and all that. I think because everything becomes very controversial at times, or very challenging at times in the organization. I think it is very important for the HR organizations in the organizations, to also help, whatever they're trying to promote. It is not just about, having a discussion or defining a process around it, but also, bring in some very experiences, or, supporting the men, when they get into these situations, what probably they're not comfortable in dealing with from a very long past of history and experiences, right? So one is that. Second thing, I think when it comes to making the impact a lot more meaningful, I feel that irrespective of the gender, it's about providing opportunities to a woman leader in particular, and also supporting them and following through that responsibility and promoting them, and voicing the impact what they're creating in a given role. I think that goes a long way in my sincere opinion, right? I think more than just looking at I think somebody said about the percentage or the number in a given boardroom or I think it's about what impact they are creating in the organization, what opportunities we have given them, what roles are we defining for them, and how are we supporting them in actually becoming successful. I think that would, in my opinion, in at least my experience, will go a long way. I think than just having this. I think this given percentages. I think every industry, I'm sure today, is talking about, while you're talking about bringing in a senior talent, make sure that 40% or 60% of the hiring, make sure that you introduce a woman in the panel, or make sure that the criteria and all that. I think that doesn't really ring a bell, quite honestly, and sometimes puts us into a lot of constraints when you're also responsible for driving a business, right? So I think I feel that sometimes I don't know whether we are trying to solve the right problem or focusing on the right problem, right? Because as I said, I also do a lot of work with the university recruiting, and especially in the field I am in the corporate software IT industry, I generally see that when we actually do a platform, which is very, very equal in many ways in terms of even assessing the candidates, for bringing it for interviews, I actually do look at, and I think the conversation does happen, that do we lower the bar to bring in, more women for interview and all that, right? I think generally, I think when we look at industries at relatively at 20% in terms of, I think at least in the software side, on the diverse population, and they keep asking us to increase the percentage strength and all that. But I think question is the problem in the corporate world today, or is the problem somewhere else, right? Where that many students are not even there in the university. So I think why are these forced measures being put in place? I think that makes it very challenging. But I think coming to the at least growing and promoting the senior leadership, Deepika, and not just term it as a token or something on the table. I think I'll just repeat once again that it is very important to give them meaningful roles, impactful roles, and also I think it is important to voice it out and communicate to the wider population of the impact what they are creating, and follow through the commitment of growing and promoting the women leadership. I think that will go a long way than just bringing a woman leader just for meeting your diversity percentage or a diversity criteria in the organization.
Agree. So I think we boil down to the fact that it has to be impact, it has to be making business sense, and it has to do a lot with the deliverables that anybody brings to the table, irrespective of gender, right? Can you still hear me? My network seems a little unstable, but
yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, loud and clear now.
Lovely. My next question is, to Manish. Manish, you are now in the L&D space, and while we're talking about learning opportunities and career development, have you felt the need for gender sensitization? So while, we are doing so much in the space of women coaching and mentoring and guiding them towards leadership roles and all of that, but do you see the need for sensitizing men also to receive a woman as a boss, or to be sensitive towards, the gender aspect of it per se? Sensitization in all.
Definitely, Deepika, but let me start my answer with one quote. I think I read somewhere, or somebody told me that in corporates there's so much of effort going on to create empowered women, but who's creating men to handle these empowered women, right? So and that's something which really hit me, that okay, yes, I mean, there is a workforce which is now being facilitated, and to enter the workforce right from the entry level till the leadership level. And of course there are going to be certain different dynamics of behaviors at the workplace, different dynamics of teams interacting with each other, and the way people, do their jobs in a team environment. So definitely yes. And I think in my workspace, I've seen the extremes of it, right? Wherein this whole sensitization becomes almost like a compliance issue, right? And it just shocks people, right? As what RK was saying, that so much so to give a very typified do's and don'ts while dealing with women, right? And I think it just takes the whole soul away from the dialogue, that you just need to be sensitive and conscious. You need not to treat women as untouchables or unspoken to, right? So it's okay to talk and, and all that. So I think, there are a few organizations that, they just, in the name of a posh and a sensitivity, they just shocks people, and people just bedazzled, and they draw a line in that sense. And I think this whole discord of having a compartmentalized dialogue, I mean, the whole issue is like very compartmentalized. On top of it, you add a layer of a very compartmentalized dialogue. I think you're just hitting the cause somewhere, right? On the other side, is an extreme sense of, a tokenism that, okay, everything needs to be having a gender element, and right from top to down, everybody has to go through these mandated sensitive workshops and all that, sensitization workshops. So I think that's another thing. I think we'll have to find a sweet spot in between, right? In that sense, where we are trying to strike a balance. And I think there have been some interesting developments, which is happening, like people are saying that, okay, look, I think before diversity, we need to focus on inclusion, right? So inclusion is something we need to focus on. Diversity may be an agenda, but inclusion is the mindset. So let's focus on mindset. And I think it took some time to change the tide to this dialogue, right? Secondly is that I think, as what Ritesh also said, the dialogue has started, right? And it's a good dialogue to have. There's a good debate which is happening in right from bedrooms to boardrooms on the whole principle of equity, which is really great to have it. I think as corporate leaders, people who are in this capability business, I think really thoughtful and responsible to shape this dialogue in terms of what we're trying to do. But to answer you, Deepika, definitely it needs a bit of sensitization, a bit of doing, because I think it's a change management of a gene, if I were to talk about that. It's been like embedded for so many centuries, right? Without men even realizing it. So I think it's a sensitive topic. A sweet spot has to be struck, and it's very contextual, right? I have seen those cases wherein in factories in far-flung area, I mean, 50 kilometers from Pondicherry, you hire women engineers and you put them there in the factory and the name of diversity, and they get spooked and they just quit within 4 months, right? So, I mean, it has to be very contextual. We need to understand what battles we want to pick it up. What kind of, even in optics, what are the kind of things we want to talk about? What is the moment of, things which we want to talk about? I think we need to be very sensitive about this. And I think at the end of it, we need to be responsible and owe it to this generation and this talent that, how do we shape this dialogue and take the constructive discussion forward?
Wonderful. I think we're just at the last part of the conversation here, but I think coming to bringing all of you men to current affairs, COP26, there was a lot of talk of, and validly so, out of 140 representations, there have been only about 10 women in those dialogues there. Now, talking about generations, and I think the one thing that we can contribute our bit towards passing on to the generation is a safer space to live in terms of climate and environment and sustainability. Now, what are your thoughts on, women in leadership in making green decisions? Any insights on that? Ratish, would you want to start this?
Yeah, go for it. Because we did talk about, so if you look at it, a lot of decisions, and I'm purely coming from a marketing perspective, and I do not know why marketers never picked on it. most decisions in a household, whether it's to buy food, whether it's to buy a car, or whether it's to buy a house, are done by women. Research has proven it. And a lot of marketers always got it wrong when they were targeting men for those decision making. Right. And if I look at the women running the household, they're very conscious about conservation. They've got to balance. I mean, to me, women are the perfect CEOs. They put so many different things: nutrition needs of the family, control spending, have some entertainment, junk food, so women will be at the forefront of the Green Revolution. Even in India, if you go back, the Green Revolution that happened in India in the 70s, women led it. Maybe it was the farmers. I remember reading it, one of Indira Gandhi's decision, which was path-breaking, that helped the country, was to have tires on bullock carts. That one thing just moved the world. Chipko movement, whatever you talk about, women have been at the forefront. Now, you take that from an agricultural setting to an industrial and corporate and ITH setting. I've seen so many women complain how many packaging comes in Amazon. With each Amazon, there's so much packaging that comes on. Kids are buying things on Amazon, and I've seen women saying, stop it, don't, just go down, walk, it'll be good for you. You'll be off the phone, you go interact with the shopkeeper or the department store and get it, and I don't need that extra packaging. Dabur came up with this toothpaste without the outer carton, right? To me, women will play an important role because they're the inherent consumers and decision makers of a lot of products that we consume. So we've got to encourage them and give practical ideas and solutions to this problem of environment, because nurturing comes naturally to women. You've mentioned it a little bit, Deepika, yourself, that, and I go back to what Ritesh said. Whatever we've learned is from our family upbringing, and that was centered around predominantly women. Women played a massive role in all our lives. And you go across cultures. You go to US, you go to Europe, you go to Africa, invariably people will turn around to mom, dad, family culture, right? So if women are the nurturers, and if women are the nurturers and they safeguard futures, and future to me is that we are doing today, the way we're consuming plastics, the way we're consuming energy. If you don't stop it, we're dead. 30 years, 50 years down the line, we'll be moving around with helmets, with a controlled environment. Right now we're up to masks, but I think so 50 years down the line, to give us practical solutions. And women have to be empowered to make generations realize if we do not fix it right now, we're dead as an organization. Those would be two important roles for me, for women.
Sure. Any other insights from the men on the panel? Manish, can you unmute yourself, please?
Sorry, I'm bad at this. Yes. So, since I'm now in the market working on the L&D learning products, and so as part of the business, we develop and we nurture women cohorts, right, with different talent segment, women engineering, women in sales, and so on and so forth. So there is a whole, and I'm sure all would have heard that there's a whole concept of women economy coming, okay, wherein they are people who exert their choices on the way the products are being made, and the way it is consumed, right? So, and this whole thing is replicated in the political system of being a silent voter, right? In the voting patterns also. So definitely, Deepika, if you ask me, there is influence group, advocacy group, which is being, nurtured, which especially as a women community, which will, exert their own views about it. But frankly, to Ratish's point, I haven't seen any marked difference between, gender lens in the way this whole environment is to be looked at, right? Because I think, and I stay in Gurgaon, right? So, and you know what the pollution is. I think we're in a dire situation. So I think it's a question of a survival, right? Of the fact that, okay, we need to do certain things drastically, to save ourselves. So to your point, I'll answer in two parts. Yes, women is going to play a very important role, but I think as a enlightened and more empowered consumer with paying capacity, they will exert their influence. I think not only about the environment choices, but every sphere of the part of the value chain. Secondly, I haven't actually picked up any kind of difference between a woman leader thinking differently versus a man leader in that sense, because frankly, it's a question of survival.
Thanks for those insights, Manish. Ritesh, RK, Nikhil, anything from you on women and green decisions?
You spoke about COP26. Now, obviously, the jury is still out on whether it was successful or whether it's one of the greatest frauds sold as progress. But if you look at the women leadership today across the globe, okay, take New Zealand, Taiwan, Germany, Finland. Some of these countries
interns, they were actually leading from the front some of the regions across India in being very resourceful, being very connecting with the volunteers. And I don't know, surprisingly, I've seen most of the volunteer-led organizations, they actually have, if you were to probably reflect on that, I think we'll probably have a lot more diverse and women leadership in those volunteer forums than in, I think, going into the corporate organization. It's something to probably reflect on and think through.
Absolutely agree. I think so. Post-COVID, I can't say post-COVID. We are in the midst of COVID. The world has changed. And I think so, personally, my focus is on, it doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman. You need to get diverse inputs because things are happening so fast, so quickly. There's an information overload and my brain can't handle that overload. So if you get more overloaded and diverse brains together, you'll have better outcomes. Otherwise, we're headed for disaster. So it's more related to survival. So it's not about just women. Have diverse voices from diverse strata of society, so that you get different perspectives, because today perspectives are so different. What you see is not what I see. And we need to see everything, because in a split second, those perspectives are plastered worldwide and they impact you personally and professionally. So I think so it's the need of the hour. It's not about getting more men, women, or that balance. If you have to survive, you've got to get diversity in, and you've got to listen to voices. If you don't, you're dead.
Very well made point. Very well made point, Ritesh.
True, absolutely true. Sorry for my, participation from the laptop got disconnected, and it's still some issue there. So I'm logging in by the phone. So quickly wrapping up, if I had to give my 3 words, and I would want each one of you to give your 3 words of your key takeaways, I think my 3 from this esteemed panel of men and having these candid conversations, the 3 words that really resonated with me was that dignity, respect, and impact equals to equity. So any insights from you all? So just take turns and share your 3 words that resonated with you most.
So I'll go first. I absolutely loved the bedroom to boardroom quote from Manish. I think it just summed up so beautifully the essence of this rather complex, delicate, and yet powerful topic. So yeah, thank you, Manish. I'm going to use that.
Thanks,
And
Nikhil.
perhaps, sort of Ratesh's point around trying to find dignity of labor as a core principle of driving equity. I think that is a very powerful statement, and that is something that is something for us to reflect upon, even as we go on in our own journeys.
Thanks, Ritesh.
I think,
RK, Manish,
for me, I think what Manish said, I think inclusion as a mindset, diversity as an agenda, I think that definitely rings a bell. So I think I'm walking with that as a amplified learning for myself. I think it is more around inclusion than just the diversity.
wonderful.
Yeah, no, I think the topic sums it all. I think we had a wonderful, diverse discussion in itself. And I think the discussion, what I loved was that I think we were talking about men as well as women, I think, which was a welcome change, what at least I hear outside. So I thoroughly enjoyed the discussion. I think we should have more of it, which gives a very, very healthy angle and very inclusive angle to this whole dialogue. So I think each one of whatever, you said, be it from the advertising industry or be it from corporate, and very profound views from, both, Ritesh and Rathish, right? In sense, and, it has been fantastic, fantastic. So thanks, in fact, Deepika, for having all of us here.
I can't resist. I have to, because it's the second reference to advertising. I'm not an advertising man. I'm a public relations guy.
Oh, sorry.
So that itself is a call out I need to make here and now. And there's a significant difference between the two words.
Indeed.
Yeah. Not that I have anything against advertising. I have a lot of great advertising friends, but yeah.
Thanks, Manish, for that. And yes, Nikhil reiterating the fact it is PR, not advertising. Rathish, anything from you as closing notes? Your 3 words that resonated, or your 3 words as takeaway?
No, my 3 words are going to be different from what we discussed. My 3 words are cliched, but I love those. Just do it. If we talk a lot, just go ahead, do it. Do it what's right for you, and do it in your circle of influence, and you'll realize that your circle, if you do it, the world joins you. So just go ahead. To me, it is just do it. You believe in it, you do it. And if you're doing the right thing or wrong thing, it doesn't matter. The world will come along and you will go towards the right thing. It's like the ants, all ants go in different directions, but at the same time, they're aligned. So to me, it is just do it.
The reason why that bedroom to boardroom thing hit home was because otherwise it's a very intellectual debate, or it's to do with a workplace debate. But when it's in my span of control within my home, it starts here, right? It starts with me. It starts here, and then it resonates out to the world. So yes, let's just all do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a very famous saying in our household is the dining table university. I think a lot of learnings, life learnings, impact, and meaningful conversations happen on the dining table when families come together and share perspectives. The important aspect is to have respect for each other's perspectives. And I've also come across a lovely quote which says that, there is your story, there is my story, and then there's the truth. So let's just, keep doing with the right intent of doing, meaningful things and leaving the environment and the world a better place for generations to come, and contribute our little iota, no matter how little or how, small the ripple, but may the ripple travel far. On that note, thank you, all of you men, for taking time out, joining this conversations. Thanks for being extremely candid. It was wonderful for me personally as well to hear so many perspectives and candid conversations from each one of you. And Yeah, I think if we can be more inclusive in terms of just decompartmentalizing things and just sometimes going with the flow and joining the impact part of it and contributing our little iota, that should be good enough towards creating a better future for all of us and the generations ahead. Truly appreciate your contribution for this conversation. It's been lovely. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deepika.
Pleasure.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Have a great day
Bye.
and week. Bye.